Hey guys, welcome back to the Fi Guys podcast. I'm Dom.
And I'm Chris.
Perfect. And we are back talking about the path to financial freedom, or FI, as they say. That is the name of the podcast. We got a new screen up, so that's kind of nice. But so starting off today's podcast, what are some clear financial goals for financial independence?
Well, Dom, what I think we should start with is, defining what financial independence means to you as an individual, because everyone's goals might be a little bit different. Financial independence for me, when I started on this path, I had a goal to be financially independent by the time I was 40 years old. So for me, that was my big goal. But for you, it could be something completely different. It could be, you don't really care when you get to retire because you love what you do.
Yeah.
When I started down the path to FI, I hated what I did. It was terrible, and that's the reason that I was so propelled and wanted to achieve FI. So I think the first thing, honestly, is about setting what financial independence means to you. What's your end goal?
Okay. I love that. It's definitely important to start with the end in mind. So that's great. That is super great. So we've defined what financial independence is. What are some smart goals or smart ways to actually measure a specific goal? Go for it.
I love the way that you used SMART, because that's kind of something. I remember, if you guys remember from high school or from school, they always used to talk about making a SMART goal, making it specific, measurable, achievable, relatable, or relevant, and time bound.
Yep.
So, SMART goal. There it is. So it's about setting something that is smart. For me, again, it was retire by the age of 40. That was measurable. Could I have done it? Was it achievable? I believe so. It was certainly relevant, and then it was time bound. At the time that I started that, I was 26 years old. I had 14 years to figure it out. I'm still not even 40 yet, but I was able to figure it out. So having a clear objective in mind is what's going to keep you focused on this path. Because I'm going to tell you, I was very lucky in that I found what I loved. So even before I reached my financial independence number, I can't see myself ever retiring anymore, because I left the job that I hated, while pursuing this path to FI, and was able to find something even better, doing what we do here, and helping people, achieve financial independence for themselves.
Absolutely. I love that. So step one is finding a goal, having a clear goal, maybe an age you want to retire by or something like that. Next would be creating a budget, right?
Yeah, of course. You always want to create a budget. We've talked about it at length, but we always need to make sure we're tracking our income and our expenses.
Okay. So income and expenses. So is there software? Because I know my dad, he tracks his expenses literally in his checkbook. I don't know if any of you guys still do that. And all of his friends give him crap about that. They're like, who writes a check? He writes checks. He balances it out and all that stuff. But there's easier ways to do it now, right?
Yeah. There's certainly easier ways. That's definitely the old way of doing it. For some people that works. If
it's not broke, don't fix it.
If it's not broke, don't fix it. If you want to carry a notebook with you everywhere and write it down, or even put a note in your phone and then just keep that going. But there are substantially easier ways now. You can always download apps like Mint. Another good one that I like to do, if you don't want to download software that's kind of aggregating all of your accounts, just go to your statements at the end of the month. Look at your credit card statements, look at your debit statements. You can see exactly how much money has left your account at the end of the month. And then from there, we're able to start creating a budget and allocating funds for essential expenses, your savings, your investments. And then we want to stick to our budget as closely as possible to really maximize your savings.
Okay, so just to keep it clear, what to you is a budget?
What to me is a budget? So to me, a budget is knowing exactly how much money how much money roughly should be going out a month into each individual thing. For me, I like to break it down into essentials and non-essentials. Okay. So in my budget software that I created for myself, I have my mortgage, my insurance, money that's going to go to my pets, money for food. All of that is an essential. No matter what happens to me, I can't cut those things out.
Gotcha.
Now I have non-essential things. So my wife and I going on our vacations, buying toys for the dogs, going out to eat, that's all a non-essential. So I keep those both in one thing. Now I still keep them together when I'm trying to figure out what my budget's going to be, but I like having a drop dead number. And that drop dead number is if stuff really, really hits the fan, if I get fired, if my wife loses her job, what is our minimum expense that we can survive on? Okay. And then now we want to start creating a budget around there. I always like to say, what it all comes down to is what you earn minus what you spend. There's that gap. That gap is what we use to achieve FI.
Okay. So the first step for more people is to at the simplest, the laziest thing you can easily do is just find out how much you make and find out how much you spend.
Yes. Find out how much you make, find out how much you spend, and then now we need to start working on increasing that gap.
Yep. You can try working on making more money and try spending less money.
Yep.
On non-essential stuff.
On non-essential stuff, obviously, you're going to have to pay for rent, or you're going to have to pay for whatever you need to pay for. But we always want to make sure, again, we can only cut so much.
Exactly.
We can grow our money
Infinitely. So what is the phi number? There we go. So what is the phi number?
Your phi number, this is based off of the Trinity study. Now, this was a study done years and years ago, I believe at Harvard, where they looked at a portfolio that was invested in the S&P 500, just a broad market index, over the last 120 years that it's been the stock market's been around. And what the Trinity study came to find is that if someone has 25 times their annual expenses in the market, then that money should theoretically live with them infinitely. Does that make sense?
Kinda. So what you're saying is 25 times your annual expense is a good rule of thumb so that you can make work optional.
Yes.
Basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
So say that for easy numbers.
Super easy. Yeah, as basic as possible. Yeah.
Let's say that my cost of living a year is $1,000.
$1,000.
I live at home with my parents. They don't charge me nothing. I only have to pay for maybe gas occasionally.
Sure.
If I have $25,000 in my investment account, and that's just put into the S&P 500, nothing special, nothing spectacular. That means I'm not using a financial advisor to maximize anything like that. I just wanted to keep it as simple as possible.
In a basic S&P.
In a basic S&P.
Gotcha.
Historically, worst case scenario, the S&P has returned a 7% return.
Okay.
So with that 25 times, it means that I can withdraw from my $25,000 4% a year. That 4% of that $25,000 is $1,000.
I see. Okay.
And
I hope that clicked for everyone. Carry on, please. I hope that clicked for everyone as well. That makes sense.
So I'm able to take my money out, and my money is still growing at a little. Since I took 4% out, S&P usually ranges anywhere from 7 to 10%. I always like to say, let's go to the lower end. Let's plan for the worst case scenario, 7%. So we're taking out the money that we need, and we still have that extra 3%, because remember, 4 plus 3 equals 7. That extra 3% is staying in the account to grow for inflation. So we're even accounting for inflation there.
That's awesome. So it really, dude, I wish I only blew through $1,000 a month or $1,000 a year. That would be great. That's really interesting, though. That's super interesting. So basically, like, just to recap that little area, because I think that's actually a gem to simplify how to get retired and not worry about money again. 25 times your annual expense, whatever that number is, if you have that number invested in the market, you can then pull out 4% or 3%.
4%, yep.
4% annually for your expenses, for your life, for whatever. And your account you won't really feel the hit when you take it out because your account will still be growing as well.
Yeah. And again, this is just a rule of thumb. I'm not going to tell somebody, hey, I got the 25, go into your office and start screaming at your boss.
Yeah.
You certainly shouldn't do that. Again, it's a good rule of thumb so that I knew for myself when I finally reached that number that I was good. And it didn't stop me from trying to make money. I continue to still want to make money because honestly, even if you achieve financial independence, it's not that you're going to say, all right, I'm going to play backgammon for the rest of my life and just sit on a beach. That's fun for like a month.
Probably.
And then after that, you're like, I need to do something again.
Yeah, you get hungry. Your mind needs to work.
It does, and that's unfortunately one of the quiet killers of a lot of retirees. They've retired from work and then they have nothing to do anymore. So it's really important, especially because we are geared towards financial independence. You can reach that really at any age, but especially for young people. If you're 20 or 30 or 40 years old like myself and I retired at that age and I just stayed retired, I'd probably be dead at like 60. and that's not really the goal. I don't know if I could be retired for 30 years doing literally nothing.
To retire is to expire.
To retire is to expire.
Hopefully people will find what they love. I mean, you got to stay sharp somehow.
You do. And just think about this. So if our expenses were $1,000 a year, that would be amazing and only $25,000. But would you say that $60,000 is a pretty reasonable living for most people in America?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can live off $60,000. So if I was to ask the viewer, if you have $60,000, you've been tracking your expenses, you've been tracking your budget, and you say, hey, I have $60,000 a year that I roughly spend, how much do you need to retire?
Not that much.
Yeah, only $1.5 million. Now, $1.5 million is not an easy feat.
No, it
but
sounds like a lot.
It sounds like a lot, but it does take time to do, but it's not impossible. Unfortunately, with most people, when I ask them how much do you need to retire, they just start throwing wild numbers out there.
Yeah, because they don't know.
$10 million, $1 billion.
Yeah.
A lot of investment software, or if you go and you look online to see like how much do I need to retire, it's going to ask you, what's your current income? So your current income, say you make $60,000, they're going to assume that you're spending, or if your expenses are $60,000, it means you're probably making more like $85,000 after taxes. So you say, I'm making $85,000. Well, it's assuming that you're keeping that $85,000 and you're spending literally all of it. And that's what it's going to say you need to retire. But obviously, you have to save money to retire.
Yeah.
And you're not spending all that money because there's still money going to taxes and going to other things.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about an emergency fund. How much should one have for an emergency fund when, because like you said, the drop dead margin, that's kind of in the same ballpark, right? What do you need for an emergency fund? Should you have it in a separate account? Is there like a certain percentage you should be hitting, or what are we thinking?
It depends on the individual, and it really depends on how secure you feel in your job. Typical rule of thumb that I like to say is 3 to 6 months.
Okay.
For me, when I quote unquote retired and I left my 9 to 5 job and started pursuing my own thing when I reached FI, I know that this wasn't the most optimal way of doing it, but I kept a year of expenses sitting in a savings account, literally doing nothing.
I love it.
Yep. And while that may not have been the most optimal thing, I could have invested, I could have made more, it allowed me to sleep at night.
It's safety.
It's safety for me.
I you know what? I find that really interesting because to me, it's like you don't always have to have all of your money invested. Money has purposes how you use it. If I have $5 here, I can go buy some oranges, or I can feel safe that I have $5, or I can invest it, and I love that aspect of that because I'm the same way. I have cash just stored away, and I could totally invest. I would love to invest it, and part of me, the hungry part of me, I'm like, oh, let's get in the market, let's get those numbers up, because I know inflation's taking it out. But it's like, dang, if everything got wiped out, I'm like, I still got this. I'm like, let's go, and we could just rebuild from here, and I love that. And one thing I am curious about, during COVID, did that change your aspect on like an emergency fund, time-wise? Because we were in it for years, it felt like.
That's a great question, Dom. And before COVID, I want to say I was kind of a jerk when I would think about people and be like, oh, well, what do you mean you don't have 3 months of expenses? But with COVID, that went from 3 months to 6 months to a year to maybe even a year and a half.
Yeah.
And that's why I've very much changed my budget and even changed a lot of the allocations that I had for my current clients. I still recommend that my current clients, they keep about 3 to 6 months in cash. But then even in their investment accounts that I am managing for them, I still keep more of a liquid buffer that isn't just sitting in cash, but it's more in like money market accounts or in like
safer,
or in short yield bonds, which typically for someone our age would be very silly to be sitting in that.
Very boring.
Yeah, very boring. Yeah. But it's still good to have a little bit.
But it's safe. Okay, well that makes sense. So yeah, definitely having 3 to 6 months. I mean, if you can go more than 6 months, go for it.
If you can, if it makes you sleep at night. But what I would say is once we start going above that, once you start going to 6 months to a year, if you have a steady job, we can really start to optimize that money a little bit more by getting it invested. Okay. Because the money just sitting in the savings account, that's really just for you to sleep well at night. That has nothing to do with you growing towards reaching FI. There's an old adage, you can't save yourself to wealth.
To wealth, yeah. I've heard that. So one way to get wealthy, one way to get away from being wealthy and being poor is debt. How important is it to eliminate debt?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, debt is one of the huge killers towards your wealth. Think about it like this.
When used incorrectly, right?
When used incorrectly. There are smart ways to use debt.
Yeah, because I know there's going to be different, there's going to be like the big-time investors that might watch this, or like the newbie investor that don't really understand it. And because I don't know about you guys, but I've been on the internet where Dave Ramsey says debt is bad, and I'll see other people saying, I'm a millionaire because of debt, So not all debt is bad, but for consumer debt, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, if we're talking about using debt to maybe fund a real estate deal, or to, real estate deals are probably the only place where I'm going to say we're going to want to use debt. There are other people who talk online about using leverage to buy options or to buy
Super risky, I would think.
which is super risky. And can they go up? Yes. And you're only going to hear online the people who are successful.
True.
But you're not going to hear from everyone else. You're not going to hear from the guy who said like, oh yeah, I put all my money in and now I'm down at zero.
Yeah. That's super true. That's super, super true. So eliminating like high interest debt as quickly as possible, that's probably the best rule of thumb, right?
Yeah.
You want to attack what's the highest interest first.
Yeah, think about it like this. Every extra $100 that you have in your budget that's going towards paying off debt or whatever, that's another $25,000 that you need in order to be able to call yourself financially independent.
Could you say that one more time? Really let that sink in for the people.
Yeah, it's actually $88. So every $88 that you have to spend a month that's going towards your debt is another $25,000 that you need to accumulate in order to reach your financial independence number.
Interesting. So why is that?
Because 88 times 12
Times 12, okay.
is
Roughly.
$1,000.
Okay.
And then that $1,000, if $1,000 that we
1,000
need to
times
take.
25. Gotcha. There's the 25,000. Okay, well that makes sense. So do we want to go on to the next topic? Do you want to stay on this one? We've got instant save and invest regularly. Or is there anything else you want to say about debt?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we talk about debt, we want to there's different ways of taking out your debt, and we've talked about this a little bit on previous podcasts. But there's either the debt snowball and there's the debt avalanche.
Okay.
So the debt snowball is, say we line up all of our debts. We have student debts, we have credit card debts, we have housing debts, car payments, all that stuff. Housing, I usually would just keep that because the interest rates are usually pretty low, so we can kind of eliminate that one. But this debt snowball is going and finding whatever is the fastest to actually pay down. So say I have a car loan that only has $100 left. The debt snowball approach would say, I want to eliminate that credit card or that car payment first, and then I'm going to move on to my next largest amount of money. Now, that's not the most optimized way of doing it. The most optimized way of doing it is the debt avalanche, where we're going to approach what has the largest interest rate. Typically, it's going to be people's credit cards. Credit cards have anywhere from a 20 to a 30% interest rate.
Oof.
Yeah.
Spicy.
So if you find yourself in that cycle, it's very difficult to get out of. But that's where we want to be. We don't want to be focusing on the car payment that or paying off the car, which has a 3 to 7% interest rate. We want to focus on that credit card debt that has a 20 to 30% interest rate. So that's the debt avalanche, is paying off the highest interest debts first.
Okay. And it probably would help like also living below your means, right?
Oh, that's always going to help you.
That's always going to help.
Again, what you make minus what you spend, that gap is what allows us to achieve financial independence. And you can grow that gap either by making more money or spending less money.
Preferably both.
Preferably both.
Preferably both.
To a point.
Like you said, you can only cut so much meat off the bones, but we can always make more money.
To a point. And, that's something that I struggled with a lot. When I was working at my last job and I didn't like it, I was so gung-ho about doing anything I could to get out of it that I kind of cut my life to bare bones and I wasn't having fun anymore. No. It wasn't until I met my wife, or my now wife, and she was able to kind of take me out of my shell and say, hey, you can live for the future and you can plan for there, but you also need to live right now.
Yeah.
Because if not, just putting your head down and suffering indefinitely just to reach FI, guess what? You're going to reach FI and nothing's going to change because you're going to have worked out that mental muscle of just embracing the suck for so long that you don't know how to actually enjoy, live life.
Okay. So what you're saying is kind of like a lot of it, it's not just finance, it's actually a lot of mindset.
So much of it is mindset.
So much of it is mindset.
So much of it is mindset.
Because if you're frugal your whole life, once you get to financial freedom, you're not going to change.
Yeah, I mean, I work with quite a few retirees. And what I found with a lot of retirees is their entire life, they flex their saving muscles. It's just like going to the gym. And let's say you only worked out your biceps. And let's say your bicep is your
bread and butter. It's your thing.
Yeah, this is my saving muscle.
Yeah.
So you only are doing biceps all day long. You never have touched your legs before.
Okay.
And then by the end of the time, you finally reach retirement and now you get to have fun. Well, that's your legs. And you've never squatted before. And now you're going to have to start completely changing it. And you're going to say, oh, once I reach this number, I'm going to be able to spend money.
Yeah.
No, you're not, because you've never flexed that muscle your entire life.
Super uncomfortable.
And now it's going to be very hard. And unfortunately, a lot of people, when they retire, now they're living off a fixed income. Now they're no longer willing to take a risk.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So they go on their entire life saying, eventually I'm going to have fun. Eventually I'm going to have fun. They finally reach the time to have fun. Due to age, their body's ability, and the mental fear they have, they're never going to actually get to live that life. So it's really important that we keep that balance.
Interesting. I just a quick little digress, not really, because I know you have a background in psychology a little bit. Could a person change? Say they're frugal for 50 years, 60 years. They retire, they got plenty of money. They don't spend money on anything, right? They thrift their clothes, whatever. Can they change?
Yes, they can change, but it's going to be a lot harder. And the reason for that is because they're going to have to want to change. The thing that brought them success their entire life has been their saving and their frugality. That is now part of their identity. For them to shed that identity means a few things. Number one, that identity may not be serving them anymore, or may have not served them to where they are. They're also going to have to take a hard look and see all the things that I gave up on in life in order to reach that. Was that worth it? And some people, that's too hard to look back at. So they're just going to continue doing what they're doing. But can people change? 100% people can change. But it takes a genuine desire on the person's behalf.
I love that. Like, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make them drink it.
And it takes a lot of work. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, to all of our listeners, like I even do therapy because even me, I'm not perfect. You know, and it's good to continue to work through things and try to get better and better.
Absolutely. I mean, you got to train your most important muscle, which is the mind. You know.
Yeah, because it dictates everything.
Everything, literally everything. So we've talked about living below your means. We've talked about the psychology of it a little bit. Let's talk about increasing your income. So we've looked at opportunities for earning potential as that we can grow so much, but we can only cut so little. Any suggestions on someone who might have, they might have some free time, they might work part-time, they want to grow a little bit more, maybe like a side hustle or anything like that?
Yeah, side hustles are amazing. You can go around and you can do Uber, you can do whatever you want. But I always say the best way to elevate your income is to invest in yourself. So what that's going to mean is, maybe pursue higher education. Obviously, look at the debt that you might have to go into to pursue that higher education, and then look at the long-term ramifications of, if I was to get this degree, what could I expect? And make sure that that cost-benefit analysis is actually worth it. You can also work on acquiring new skills. I can tell you, in the past 2 weeks, I have probably acquired 20 new skills.
Heck yeah.
And that all comes to, creating YouTube channels, thumbnails. I created, creating websites. That all comes from just working hard and investing in myself and giving myself that time. You can always start a new business. I think everyone should honestly own their own business.
I think it's definitely something that I agree with 100%. What's interesting is, like, there's so many people from the baby boomer generation that are retiring right now that own businesses, and the kids don't want them. So you can just buy up businesses. There's a site I think it's called bizbuy.com.
Oh, I've never heard of this.
It's you can go through it, and people are just listing businesses for sale, and you can do seller finance, all types of businesses, and it's kind of fun. It's really fun. Like, I was on this website actually, and this is when I was on vacation in Minnesota recently. We were driving past this little town, kinda. It's in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the woods, and then I'll get back to our financial podcast.
It's okay.
We were driving past this, and it's beautiful. It's cute. It's got it's got a gas station there. It's got an RV park, whatever, right? And we're driving past it. I was like, "Dad, you see that right there?" He's like, "Oh, I love that place." I said, "That place is for sale for $12 million." How do you know that? How could you possibly know that? It's not in the paper, And I was like, "Well, I looked up different businesses in this area for sale, and based on the comps and everything, this is what they're selling it for."
Wow.
And it's just fun. It's like, why? As someone who started a business, it's not easy. It's definitely not easy if you've never done it before. But since I've done it, it's like, oh, I could start another one, no problem.
Yep.
But it's a lot. I would think it's a lot easier to buy a business too.
It probably is a lot. I've never thought about buying a business, quite frankly. That might be a good idea. A lot of advisors will buy other advisors' books of business when they retire.
Makes sense.
Which I've done in the past. But one thing you did talk about that really just spurred my interest there is the first time is always the hardest. Yeah. Doing it the first time, but once you've done it, and once When I became a business owner for the first time, I always thought, because I didn't come from money. My parents didn't know how to do that. My dad was a Marine. My mom was in the Army, and then she retired after my sister was born to be home with us. I didn't come from any of that. So I always thought, oh, business owners, that's for somebody else.
Yeah.
But the moment I became a business owner, I figured out, oh, I can do this.
It's not as scary.
It's not as scary as I
It's
thought.
not that scary.
And now I can do it again and do it again and do it again. But first things first was clearing that first hurdle. And now I can call myself a business owner who actually owns multiple businesses.
It's so fun too. Mm-hmm. It's kind of fun.
It's fun. Yeah, you really get to flex your creative muscle.
Right.
So, that's another one. Start a business. It doesn't really matter what it is. You can sell stuff on Etsy.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want.
It doesn't have to be so official where you need a storefront, right?
Nope.
Nowadays, you can just open up a Shopify account, make some stickers, whatever.
I have 2 businesses out of my house.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm same. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you almost have to.
Yep.
And it's creatively entertaining and fun, and it's cool to leave your stamp on the world, you know?
It is. Another good one too, talking about businesses, if that might not be right for you right now, is just seek a higher paying job.
True.
You can always do that. You can always, again, invest in yourself, invest in what it is that you need. What I always like to do if I'm seeking a higher paying job is work for the job that you want. Go to your bosses, actually take the initiative that you need in order to want to improve. What I found when I was working for other people, I feel like more drive than other people. So when I would go to my bosses and ask, hey, what do you need from me to be more successful? What do you want from me? How can I help? Every boss would be like, whoa, what's this guy doing? No one's ever asked me that question.
Yeah.
I want you to do these things. And you'll find that most good supervisors, they want you to succeed, and they'll tell you exactly what you need to do to be more successful. And if you just stick to those things, you keep your head down, you work hard, and you're rewarded for your work, that's a great way to continue to open up the doors.
I love that.
To seeking higher jobs.
I love that. Just a quick little quick little note for this next one. Is there any books that you would recommend for training your mind on personal finance? Maybe like 3 quick books. I can think of one right off the bat.
What's yours?
Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki is good.
It's a classic.
It is a classic.
I hate recommending it because it's like everybody recommends it. But it's like, if you're new to personal finance or just finance or psychology of money, it's pretty good. Yeah. It's a good baseline.
I think that's a good one. Just stick to Rich Dad, Poor Dad though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't keep it going down the Robert Kiyosaki rabbit hole.
I agree. I think he has some other stuff, but that's his best book.
When we talked a lot about debt and stuff earlier, he's one of the big proponents of leveraging everything.
Yeah.
Which is fine for some people, but for a lot of people, it's also not great.
He is an entrepreneur at heart.
He is.
And that's a little different.
Yeah, and I think there's always different things of doing, right? Is he trying to achieve financial independence, or is he selling his courses?
True. Yeah, you got to look at everything objectively and try and figure out why are they doing this. Yeah.
Another good book when we talk about that is called The Richest Man in Babylon.
I've heard about that one.
Yeah.
I haven't read that one, but I've heard about it.
It's an old book, and the thing that I like about The Richest Man in Babylon is it's really not a finance book per se, but it's a story about saving money and paying yourself first.
Okay.
And that's what we talked about with, how much money you make versus how much money you spend. There's that gap.
Yeah.
If you actually if you actually give yourself that money first, so say you make $1,000, if you take 200 of that immediately and put it into your investment account, put it into your savings account, you're not going to miss it.
No,
but
you don't even feel it.
You don't even feel it. So that's why 401ks and things like that are so effective. That's something we should maybe talk a little bit about is, ways to save and invest regularly.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we got to talk about that. So let's talk right about it. Let's talk about it right now. Saving and investing regularly. What do you think is the best method? I know you were just talking about just getting it taken out of your paycheck already.
Yeah.
For me, I have an Acorns account, and every Wednesday it just withdraws a certain amount of money and invests it right into the market. Not even feel it. And same with has roundups where it's okay, buy a cup of coffee for $2.50. The extra 50 cents gets put into the market, you know? So what are some other ways that people can save and invest?
Acorns is a really good one. Another one that I really like, it's called M1 Finance, and it does the exact same thing. Okay. You can also work with a financial advisor who can create a plan for you, and they can set up the exact same thing. If you don't know what you're doing and and you're saying, I don't want to be a part of this, I don't want to do it, just someone else, please, then reach out to an advisor who can help you out.
They can reach out to you.
Yeah, they could reach out to me for all I care. Just please make sure you work with a fiduciary advisor who actually has your best interest at heart. You can ask that question straight up. Are you a fiduciary? If they say anything but yes, run. Because a lot of people can say yes, and then they'll give you a long-winded answer as to when they're acting as a fiduciary. Not worth it, not worth your time.
And a fiduciary, for those that don't know, what is that?
A fiduciary means that as a fiduciary, when I'm managing your money, I must have your best interest at heart.
You're acting basically as if it was your own money. Okay, well, that's good to know.
Yeah, I can't sell products for commission. I have to do what is in the best interest of the client, to my opinion. But to continue back to your question, if that's not what you want to do, if you have a job that offers a 401k, and unfortunately only 1 out of 3 jobs in America offer those benefits, you can contribute a pretty sizable amount of money to that 401k. In 2023, you contribute up to $21,500 into a 401k. And if you get used to not seeing that money come through, you're going to be really set. I was really lucky in that I was just kind of a natural born saver just by happenstance. So when I started working at the jobs that I didn't like, I was always told you need to save 10%. It was in my head. So I was like, okay, well, I was told to save 10%. I'm just going to save 20%.
Screw it.
To get there. So I just did that religiously, 25% every time. And I never thought about not having that money because it was automatically taken before I even got the paycheck. That money was already taken out and put into a savings account. So eventually when I ended up leaving my jobs, when I ended up leaving my first job, I ended up having like $40,000 sitting inside of an account.
That you didn't even notice.
Yeah, I didn't even notice I had.
That's awesome.
Then I started learning more about finance, and then I was able to optimize it a lot more. But that was a really, really good starting point to see how much money can grow and how fast it can if you're doing the right things. You're just staying consistent to a plan.
Gosh, that's awesome. Yeah, I feel like a 401k is the easiest way, if you have that at your job, to just stash away money for the future. I know some companies match as well.
Yeah.
Very rare, I'm sure. But
it's not as rare. What's more rare, unfortunately, is that do they offer the 401k? And then if they do offer the 401k, typically there is a match, usually anywhere from 1 to 5%, 1 to 3%. Is going to be pretty typical. 3% is pretty typical.
Okay. And you could also, I'll let you finish there.
Okay. I was going to say it also will depend on how much you contribute. So obviously they're trying to incentivize you to do so. So they'll say, we'll contribute 3%, but you have to contribute 6%.
Okay. That's fair. That's interesting. But you could also do like tax advantage accounts like Roth IRA and stuff like that.
Yeah. And remember, the 401k is also a tax advantage account too.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, because so you don't get taxed when you sell, or how does that work?
Yeah. Okay. So this is a really good question and something that the audiences should know. So with a 401k, they can be a traditional or a Roth. With an IRA, you can be a traditional or a Roth. What a traditional account means, it means that it is a qualified account for tax purposes. So it means that when I get the money, in this tax year, I'm not going to spend, how do I put this? You make $100,000 this year.
Okay.
You put $20,000 into a traditional account. When you go to file your taxes, you get to tell the IRS, I only made $80,000 this year.
Okay.
Because you're taking that $20,000 and you're putting into a traditional account. Now, in the future, in 20, 30, 40 years, when you retire and you start taking money out of that account, say that $20,000 over the next 10 years has now grown to $60,000.
Out of the traditional account.
Out of the traditional account. Anytime you take money out of the traditional account, you now have to pay taxes on it.
For a 401k and for the other one?
Yeah, as long as you're in a traditional.
Okay.
But if it's in a Roth, are you keeping up with me there?
Yeah.
Okay. If we're in a Roth account, you make $100,000, you contribute $20,000 into your Roth 401k. You still have to tell the IRS in this year that you made $100,000. Gotcha. But the nice thing is, in the future, in 10, 20 years, when that $20,000 has now grown to $60,000, $80,000, any money you pull out of that is tax-free because you paid the taxes on the beginning.
That is so interesting. So it's pre-taxed on a Roth. But if you wanted to decrease your taxable income, you could put your money in a traditional account.
Yep.
That's wild.
So
what the heck?
You can actually control your tax rates.
Yeah.
So I always focus on control what you can control now. For me, what I did is I contributed to a Roth IRA for a really long time. I always had that. And I had my traditional 401k. So when I was making six figures, I was trying to figure out like how can I, because I wasn't married, I didn't have a house at the time. I needed to figure out how could I lower my taxable burden. So I was able to write off, or not write off, but be able to take a lot of money, put it into traditional accounts. And then later on, what we can talk about is a Roth conversion, where you're actually able to move that traditional account into a Roth later on years that you don't have enough money.
What the heck?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Is there like a limit to how much you can put into a traditional?
Yes.
there
So
is a
for
limit.
yeah, there's a limit. For every year the IRS and Congress sets the amount. So for a traditional IRA, this year it's $6,500. For a 401k, it's $21,500. So basically, you can put $30,000 away and lower your taxable burden by $30,000 right now.
Okay. So what kind of accounts do people do when, say, I hit the lottery, or say a family member died and they gave me $200,000, and can I go and invest that $200,000?
Yeah, 100%.
So what account would that be in?
That's going to be in something called a non-qualified account or just a
Gotcha.
normal brokerage account.
Just a normal one.
Yeah,
Okay.
but you can still move that money into a traditional IRA or a Roth. You just have to do it over time because there's limits of how much you can
Limits.
put into each year.
Gotcha.
Yep. And remember that in order to contribute to an IRA, a 401k,
working.
you have to have earned income.
Gotcha. Yeah. Can't
Yeah.
have passive.
Can't have passive income.
So nothing from like, I wonder, does real estate count as passive?
Yes.
It does count as passive. Okay. That's very interesting. So, gosh, that's wild. That's actually wild. I didn't know about the traditional sense. I always thought that traditional, I didn't realize that there was a the non-traditional one.
Yeah, the Roth or
No, I knew about the Roth. I have a Roth
Okay.
and I have a traditional. But I didn't know there was a third one.
a
That's
non-qualified.
non-qualified. That is, and the taxable income thing, that is crazy.
Yeah, we could definitely, if the audience wants me to, I can go more into that
Oh
because
my.
that really helped me when I figured that out, how to supercharge my path to financial independence.
Heck
Because
yeah.
you're able to control your tax rates while you're working. I was able to, when I left work and started my own business, there was some time where I wasn't making as much money as I was before.
Yeah.
So I was able to do a bunch of conversions of my traditional IRA to my Roth.
Yeah.
So now, and then I wasn't making money, so I paid like zero taxes on that because I wasn't making anything.
And then when you take out the money from a traditional, you're getting taxed though.
Yes, but I never actually took it out. I just converted it to the Roth.
Gotcha. And you don't pay taxes on a Roth because it's pre-taxed.
The Roth is actually post-taxed.
Oh, it's post-taxed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, the traditional is pre-taxed. The Roth is post-taxed. Because post-tax, I have already been taxed on it. Now it's going to the Roth. Pre-tax, I have not been taxed on it. It's going to traditional.
Okay. Might have been lost on that one a little bit. But well, we'll do a whole episode on that.
We can
I would
certainly-
love to do a whole episode on that. So let's talk a little bit about lifestyle inflation. I know that's a big problem in today's society, especially with social media. People seeing, it used to be like, oh, my neighbor got a new car, I should get a new car. Now, on social media, everyone's 22 years old and in Dubai, right, flying on private jets and stuff. You got to avoid that, right?
Yeah, you definitely have to avoid that. One of the scariest things is what really holds people back from achieving financial independence is that lifestyle creep. As their income increases, so does the temptation to go out and buy more money. And I think it's very, very...
Buy more things.
Buy more things, sorry.
Yeah,
not buy
no, you're
more.
good.
If you could buy more money, that'd
Dude,
be cool too.
sign me up. Let's
Yeah,
do it. Let's do it.
I definitely do that. But yeah, I mean, as your income grows, so does unfortunately most people's lifestyle continue to grow. And it's very easy to fall into the trap of once I have something, I can't imagine my life without it.
Yeah.
But if you never have those things, for myself, if I think back to when I was in college, I was pretty happy. I was living in a room or in a house with like 4 other dudes. I was like, oh, this is life. This is cool. But now, if you were to take me with what I currently have and put me back in that lifestyle,
Yeah. That would suck.
I'd freak out.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of showing you how much lifestyle inflation has come to go. But back then I was living off of
Ramen noodles. And,
ramen noodles, and
Yeah.
I was good. I was good and healthy,
Yeah.
healthy and happy, and like living off of like nothing in terms of money. If I kept that lifestyle, how much sooner could I have achieved FI? But again, there's that balance there on would I have wanted to do that. No.
That is, dude, that analogy hit me so hard of like taking me back to like, oh, no, thank you. So rather than, inflating your life and more money, getting more money and spending it, You're saying basically invest it.
Yep, channel. So if you get a raise or whatever, take some of that money and have fun with it. But what you should do is maybe take 50%, and that's just a rough number. If you want to do more, please. And start. So say you get a $10,000 raise, take $5,000 of that and have fun with it. But take the other $5,000 and then just automatically start investing it, because you're not used to having that extra $10,000.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes the most sense. I mean, if you're not going to feel it, might as well get something for it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, what I was going to say is like be ruthless on your fixed costs that you add to your life, because once they're there, they're very hard to get rid of.
That's so true.
You know, think about people with Netflix. Netflix is a great example. Can you imagine life without Netflix? And like,
It's so true. And even like good habits too. Like I just joined this gym and it's a little bit pricey. And if I'd have to cut that and go back down to like a gym with less amenities, oh dude, that would hurt.
it's
That would
tough.
suck.
So I created my own gym in my house years and years ago. You know, I was tired of driving there. I was tired of doing it.
Totally get it.
So I made my own gym in my house. I have a squat rack, have rubber plates and everything
the
like
good
that.
stuff, yeah.
It's all great. You know, and you can certainly do that. And then I totally forgot what it was like to go to a gym after years. But then recently I went to San Diego and my sister said, will you go to the gym with me? So I went to the gym with her and I remembered how great a gym is. And now I'm
Yeah.
actually searching for a new gym to start going to.
I love it.
You
I
know,
love it. That's
so-
cool. That's super cool.
But that's because I've made decisions in my life that allow me the optionality to do that. You know, I have the ability through the hard work and the dedication I put into this to be able to do what I want to do. You know, I think before we move on to our last point, I want to talk about educating yourself in personal finances a little bit too.
I would love that.
You know, I think it's really important that, you know, like we talked about for your job and making more money, that we continue to take time to learn about about your personal finances, about your investments, and about money management. So, you know, continue to read books. You can always go to workshops, listen to things like us out here on the Fi Guys. You know, if you guys really want to, you can always reach out to us here at the Fi Guys. I run my own firm here out of Arizona called Monzon Wealth. You can always check out my website there. It's just monzonwealth.com. You know, we're here on YouTube. There's so many different ways that you can go ahead and do that. But, you know, what you need to do is just continue to educate yourself and find people that you just connect with and that you like listening to and
Absolutely.
who can teach you something.
Absolutely. I think the key is education and action. You know, I would love for you guys to listen to all of this, but if you don't use any of it, you're not getting anything out of it. You know, like you should be tracking your expenses. You should be budgeting. You should be doing everything we talked about today, you know? And it's important to, you know, stay committed and stay patient and all that stuff. And, you know, because the goal really is to achieve the financial goal, become a Fi Guy or financially independent guy or girl, don't matter. But, yeah, do you want to reevaluate and just for this last topic?
Yeah, I just before we talk about that, just staying committed and being patient. You know, financial independence is a journey that's going to be different for everyone. Some people might be able to reach it really, really fast.
Yeah.
Some
Don't
people
wanna
might
compare
be able
yourself
to. Yeah, don't compare.
Yeah.
You know, this is your journey, and you get to stick to it however you want. So just stay committed, be patient. Even if progress seems slow at times, consistency and discipline really are the keys to all long-term success.
I love that.
You know, just think about the first time that you went to the gym or the first time you ran a mile. The first time was probably really, really hard.
Yeah.
But then as you continue to build and get better and stayed consistent with it, it got a lot easier. You know, financial success is more about specific systems and habits that you implement into your life than making the next best sexy investment.
Yeah, I love that. That's definitely key, because if you can't stick to something, it's not going to last, because things take time.
Yeah, success will come to people who stay long enough in the game.
I love that. So for our final point today, you ready to do the final point?
Yep, let's do it.
Let's do it. Alrighty, so we're trying to periodically review your financial situation and goals. That is super important to make sure you're on track, right?
It's important to make sure you're on track, and it's also good to make sure that you change up things as lifestyle changes.
Sure.
You know, my wife and I, we're planning on starting a family here in the next year or two. So as you can imagine, my life right now is going to be very, very different. And the way that I track my money, the way that I expense everything is going to be very different when there's now a new mouth to feed and everything. You know, the way I look at my dogs right now, you know, and that those are necessary expenses. The same thing with the kids. You know, I can't be like, oh no, that's an unnecessary expense.
Yeah,
Stuff
they
relates
don't
to
need
fan.
it, yeah.
We'll just put them outside.
Get rid of them.
You know. So,
Yeah.
you know, you always have to reevaluate, because life's going to change. Someone might pass away. Maybe someone gets sick. And unfortunately, I've seen a lot of people who have really gotten so committed to sticking to, I need to reach this number by this age, or I set my number. The first one we talked about was setting the goal, and someone says, I set my goal, I'm going to stick to it no matter what. That's not sustainable. Life is going to change, and your goals are going to have to change along with it.
Life is meant for living.
Life is meant for living.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Well, guys, I think that'll be it on today's podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed. Would you like to read the outro for today?
Sure.
Go for it.
Remember, financial independence is not about getting rich quickly. It's about making smart decisions, saving diligently, and investing wisely to achieve long-term financial growth. So please go out there, make it a great day, take one actionable step like we always talk about, and we'll see you next time on The Fight Guys.
Peace.
Later.